Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, Team USA defeats South Sudan. A bit of a different approach, a different lineup. We'll talk about what was different about this game versus their first win over Serbia. We'll also talk about Ant's role and what to expect moving forward from Team USA. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Lockdown Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Lockdown Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are now over in every other sport, we're just looking at the Olympics. We're looking at WNBA. We'll start back up here soon. Of course, baseball. That's it. Currently no football, no regular season basketball, no hockey. The sports are not sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hopefully you had a chance to watch the Team USA South Sudan game on Wednesday afternoon. I want to talk about that today. That's what today's show will be all about. Next up is Puerto Rico. We'll look ahead. We'll talk about where all the groups are at. So we'll cover all that here today. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. No matter where you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also, of course, watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. So Team USA coming off of an impressive win, really a dismantling of a good Serbian team, taking on South Sudan. Of course, we know the background, and I previewed the matchup on Wednesday's show. South Sudan only lost by a point in the friendly last week or week and a half ago or so against Team USA. LeBron hits the shot with 8 seconds left or whatever. South Sudan still has a chance to win the game, but Team USA holds on to win. We knew this was going to be a tricky matchup because they play hard. I mean, everyone plays hard at the Olympics, but they play hard. They're fast. They're athletic. And they have enough good shooters. The big advantage Team USA had was overall team size. And I was curious, after game one, Steve Kerr talked about how he called himself an idiot, that's his word, for not playing Jason Tatum at all, which is kind of crazy. Tatum and Halliburton were the only two players that did not play in the first game. And on the post-game pod on Monday, I talked about how Joel Embiid was easily the worst player on the floor for Team USA. And I said on Wednesday's show that Embiid would probably need to have a really big game against South Sudan because of the size advantage. Well, Kerr went the opposite direction, and it absolutely worked, which was just play smaller and use your overall team size, 1 through 5 or 1 through 11 or whatever, as it were, to overwhelm South Sudan instead of just pounding Embiid in the post or, Embiid, tends to float out to the perimeter. And of course, that's what, that worked when the Team USA did spread the floor in this game. It's not like they simply were posting up a bunch. We'll get into this a little bit. But it was the overall size, the size of the guards to look over the defense, the size of bigs to seal, even wings, bigger wings to seal in the paint and get lobs and get, again, the size of the guards and the wings to have the ability to see over the defense to make those passes. And Ant was part of that as well. Ant, LeBron, Kevin Durant. These guys were much bigger than the guys that were guarding them, and it gave them an advantage to create that leverage. The ability to create that leverage is a better way to say that. And credit Steve Kerr for basically just saying, hey, look, we're going to spread the floor out and create more space, not necessarily just to shoot threes, which they did do, and they did it well. Not quite as good as they did against Serbia, but they didn't need to. It was about thinning out a smaller South Sudan team. An athletic one that can scramble well. But what it did was it allowed guys like Bam Adebayo had a huge game. We'll talk about that. Kevin Durant was good again. LeBron had a couple of tough buckets inside. But using their size, Anthony Davis, using their size in just a different way than like post-ups or just launching threes. It was spreading the floor, trying to work the ball inside, and then working off of that to get some three-point attempts. And it worked extremely well. There was a starting lineup change. Joel Embiid did not start. Not only did he not start, he did not play. And instead, we saw Jason Tatum go from not playing at all on Sunday against Serbia to starting and playing 17 minutes in this game. Tyrese Haliburton even got into the game, playing 8 minutes off the bench and played really well. Hit a couple of one wide open three, another more contested three. But he played well in 8 minutes. So 11 of the 12 guys played. Embiid was the only one that did not. And again, Kerr's idea here is like, hey, we'll put Davis at the 5, LeBron at the 4. There's still a ton of size out there. Other than Steph Curry, every one of those guys is bigger than actually even Steph, but certainly bigger than their direct counterpart with South Sudan. I guess let's talk about Ant first, and then we'll get into a couple of the other guys. So Anthony Edwards was really good in this game, and the line looks solid, like most of his lines so far in the friendlies, and then so far through the 2 games in pool play. He scored 5 points at like the last minute, so it wasn't his scoring that really impressed me. I mean, he would have basically been the 3rd lowest scorer in the team. Well, that's not true. There were 3 starters that didn't score much, but Ant ended up with 13 points at 9 shots. So he wasn't super efficient. It was fine, but it was more the defense and the playmaking that impressed me. He finished with 3 steals, and one of his buckets in the last minute was a pickpocket of one of the South Sudan guards. I don't think it was Carlik Jones, but maybe it was, where he just straight took the ball from him, reached around and tapped it away from. He was guarding him, reached around to the backside as the guard was going to cross over, tipped the ball away, went and got a dunk. Then he hit a 3 in like the final 20 seconds. But that steal was great. He had 2 other impressive steals and multiple other deflections. I would guarantee that Anthony Edwards led the team in deflections in this game. He was active. He was everywhere. Again, much bigger than whoever he was guarding, and was really, really pressed up on the ball. Like mid-season Anthony Edwards form. He didn't look tired like he did in the playoffs, right? He'll have a little bit of time off, and apparently, as he said publicly, continue to work on his conditioning, knowing he has to be in even better shape next year to be able to withstand hopefully another long playoff run. That sort of conditioning showed up here. Now, he only had to play 17 minutes, right? Like these guys aren't playing more than 20, 22 minutes right now. And that's the beauty of having such a deep team and also the Olympics period. Is none of these guys are going to play super heavy minutes. They're getting 2 days off in between games right now. It's great. 2 full days off in between games. But Ant defensively was awesome. He was in the jersey of whoever he was guarding. He was overwhelming them with size, with physicality, pressing up on the ball. He had 0 fouls in the first game. He only had 1 foul called in this game. And it was also, it was a foul, but it was kind of, he was retreating and didn't get squared up. But he's taking advantage of some of the additional allowed physicality, or the additional physicality that's allowed in the Olympics. And that, to me, was the best thing he did in this game. The other thing he did really well was playmaking. He only had 2 assists to 1 turnover. One of them was a really nice kind of probe the defense, make them, kind of suck the defense in, and then jump pass down to Bam Adebayo for a dunk. Just a really, really next level type play from Ant. It's exactly, we've seen him do it before with Rudy, with Cat. But it's one of those things where you see it, it's like, all right, if he adds that consistently, if he can threaten to do that consistently. Now, the other piece is the opposing defense has to miss that back end rotation. So, like, we have to point out that doesn't always happen. Sometimes they make that rotation. So then it's a skip past the opposite corner or a jump past the opposite corner. And sometimes it's that, right? So it's that next level recognition and then the consistent execution that we need to see from Anthony Edwards. And we absolutely saw that again in this game. I thought it was a really good performance. I want to get a bit more to Bam and how the Team USA use their size. We will do studs and duds. I'll have a couple more Ant notes. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. Normally, this time of the summer is the dog days. We just don't get a whole lot to be excited about sports-wise. Thankfully, we have the Olympics, and there's plenty of Olympic stuff over at FanDuel. But overall in the summer, sports just don't sports like we want them to. However, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I talked on yesterday's show about all the different numbers. Of course, Team USA heavy gold medal favorites. And I don't know why you'd pick against them at this point with how good they've looked through 2 games. A much, what should be an easier matchup even against Puerto Rico on Saturday. And then things get tough when you get to the quarterfinals. You can't slip up there. But anyway, lots of fun bets there on medals. I think it's actually kind of fun to try and predict who's going to get the silver medal, who's going to get the bronze medal. So go check that out over at FanDuel. Again, they're hooking up customers with a booster bonus daily, and it's everyone. It's not just new customers right now. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or for the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. So I talked a little right off the top about Team USA taking advantage of their size, and Bam Adebayo is obviously the line that pops the most out of the box score. 18 points on 8 of 10 shooting, led the team in scoring, 7 rebounds, which tied for the team lead. He also had a couple of blocks, a steal, and an assist, and he is such a perfect fit. This is one of my observations from the first couple games. Such a perfect fit for FIBA and for the the international basketball stage because of his versatility as a big. He could do everything. He can bring the ball up the floor. He can shoot from the outside. He knocked down 2 threes in this game, but he's such a good roll big, so perfect at diving to the rim. His understanding of that timing, that feel for hey, I have the space to do this, or here's where I should slip the screen, or here's the open space on the floor. That's such an important thing for a big athletic big like Bam to have, to make him as useful as possible. And he checks all the boxes. He's such a good fit for international play. They don't need to post him up, right? Like, that's not his game. They don't need that in their game. If they needed somebody to post up, they have Embiid, they have Anthony Davis, they have LeBron. Against most of these teams, there's no reason to do that. The more effective way to use their size advantage is exactly what they did. Spread the floor out, essentially spread pick and roll a bunch, actually. And when given the opportunity, run the floor, seal the smaller player. No matter who it is, they're going to be smaller than you. Remember, there's only one 7-footer on South Sudan, and he only played 2 minutes of this game. They played a bunch of 6'8", 6'9" guys, and they have some smaller guards. So as I said earlier, this is a 1 through 12, hey, we're bigger than you situation. Run the floor, seal somebody in the post, get the ball, and convert a dunk. Offensive rebounds, that was also key in this game for Team USA. South Sudan had 15 just because they're super active and they missed a lot of shots. Team USA had 10, and they shot 53% for the floor. There were just less available offensive rebounds. Bam had 2, Anthony Davis had 2, Jason Tatum had 2. So being able to take advantage there was big. So South Sudan actually did win the rebounding battle. But again, that's because they had so many missed shot opportunities, and they're such an active team. They play hard. They're athletic. They are long for as relatively short, quote unquote short, but compared to Team USA, a much smaller team from top to bottom. So Bam was great. Again, his feel and the way Team USA used him was super smart. And what it did was it gave additional space to kick the ball out and knock down some threes. They didn't shoot the ball quite as well. I mean, they were over 50%, I think, against Serbia. It was just insane. In this game, they were 43%, which will play. Like, you shoot 43% from 3 on 30 shots, that volume, you're going to be really good. You're going to turn out okay. And they didn't get those shots, at least not the ones they made, by simply jacking shots in transition. It's funny. It was almost the old school, like you hear the old commentators and you always just hear broadcasters say, you still sometimes do. I mean, if you go on League Pass, you can hear a lot of things that Wolves fans are fortunate to not hear listening to Jim Pete and Michael Grady. But working the ball from the inside out, right? This was that, but not because they were just old school, throw the ball in the post, get the double team, kick it out, and try and get a perimeter. We'll call it a mid-range 2, right? If we're talking about 90s basketball. That's not what this was. This was throw the ball in, see if you can get a steal and a dunk, or hit a cutter, hit a backdoor cutter. But if they collapse, kick the ball back out and get a 3. This was way more of that than let's shoot a bunch of threes, because I'm sure part of the game plan was shooting a lot of early threes early in the shot clock could lead to more fast breaks the other way for an athletic team that's going to play hard and fast. And as I said on Wednesday's show, and I say all the time, the underdog wants to play a higher variance game. they'd rather play a faster game with more possessions and just hope that they get hot and make some threes and get some fouls in transition. Whereas Team USA, I mean, they have enough of an advantage. Granted, the exhibition was so close, but they probably had enough of an advantage that they didn't care too much about getting into a shootout. But the perfect game plan would be to play a little bit slower, use the size to your advantage in the way that I already described, throw the ball in to a roller. Maybe it's a short roll, kick back out to the perimeter, or it's somebody that slips the screen, gets all the way into the paint underneath the basket like Bam did multiple times, and then kick the ball back out to the perimeter. Perimeter jump shooters, the starters only made 1 3 for Team USA in this game. It was kind of crazy. Starters were 1 for 12 from outside the arc, which is absolutely crazy. Steph Curry was 0 for 6 on 3-point attempts. LeBron was 0 for 3. Tatum was 0 of 1. Booker was 1 of 2. So 1 for 12 for the starters. But the bench shot, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. The bench was 13 of, well, I don't know. What did I say? 12. 13 to 28. The bench was 13 of 28 from outside. No, wait. That's not right. 13 of 18. There we go. The bench was 12 of 18. Should have done the math first. The bench was 12 of 18 outside the arc, which is crazy. That's 67% outside the arc. The bench was 12 of 18. The starters were 1 of 12 from outside the arc. Durant 2 of 2, Bam 2 of 3, Ant 2 of 4, Halliburton 2 of 3. Derek White was awesome, 3 of 3. We'll talk more about him when we get to studs and duds. And Drew Holiday, who did not start in this game, was 1 of 3. He was the other starting lineup adjustment, not starting. 1 of 3 off the bench for Drew Holiday from outside the arc. So crazy. The bench shoots 67% from outside the arc. The starters shoot 1 of 12, which is less than 10%. I'll do that math there for you. Really interesting how that played out. But again, the game plan wasn't simply run and gun. The game plan wasn't dominating the post, overwhelm with size there. It was overwhelm everywhere else. Work the ball in, then back out. Play fast when you have the opportunity. But they still turned it over a little more than you'd like to see. 15 turnovers. It was better than in game 1. 6 of the 15 were LeBron. The very first possession of the game, they tried to hit like almost a blind backdoor pass. It was a weird thing to try and do on the first play of the game against the team you have a big advantage against. But LeBron's been just a little bit fast and loose so far in the first 2 games. But like, it's not the worst thing. It hasn't hurt them too much. I mean, he had 5 assists in this game, but he had the 6 turnovers. I think last game it was like, what did he have? Like 9 assists and 7 turnovers or something like that. So a little bit all over the map, but overall fine. All right. I want to get into some final takeaways. We'll do individual studs and duds and get you ready for what's upcoming here next for Team USA. We'll update you in all the groups. We'll do all of that here next. All right. So let's do studs and duds. Number 1 stud, obviously, Bam Adebayo played great. We already talked about his impact, how he used his size. He was also good defensively in this game. Not that he needed to do a ton interior defense-wise. I should also point out that Omat with South Sudan, he's the Matamidi alum from Minnesota. He played at Matamidi High School and a couple years at St. Paul, Concordia St. Paul. Went to a community college somewhere else, and then ended up at Baylor with a scholarship. But apparently he didn't start playing basketball until his junior year of high school. He was on the JV team. He only played 1 year of varsity basketball at Matamidi and has put together a nice career for himself. G League, but a lot of time overseas. He's 29 now. Really good in this game. 24 points, very active, 8 of 12 shooting, knocked down 3 threes on 5 tries. Really good game for him. Carlik Jones for South Sudan, by the way, did exactly what we expected, which was high volume scoring. He scored. He had 18 points. Took him 19 shots to do it. He also had 7 assists, had 4 turnovers. Good player. Mario Shayok, of course, a little bit of NBA experience with the Sixers. He only had 12 points, had 15 shots. He was pretty quiet in this game, 1 of 5 on 3, so that certainly helped. Same thing with Waylon Gabriel. Had a relatively quiet game, actually very quiet game, 2 points. He did have 10 boards, led the game lead, game high in rebounding. Anyway, Bam Adebayo, awesome, really good on the interior, 18 and 7, 8 of 10 shooting, 2 of 3 on 3, so it wasn't just dunks. 2 blocks, an assist, a steal, only 2 turnovers, and 1 foul in 21 minutes. Side note, Team USA did a great job of not fouling. Only 14 fouls in this game collectively. South Sudan only attempted 12 free throws. Team USA had 20 free throw attempts in this game. Another stud for Team USA. We'll go with Anthony Edwards. I honestly think like it doesn't pop, like his stat line doesn't pop too much out of the box score, except for he did tie for the team lead in steals with 3. He did get to the line 4 times. And I talked already about the defense. That's, to me, what was most impressive. The ball pressure that Ant used in this game, the talking that Team USA had defensively. There was one possession. I don't remember who actually – I actually think it was – no, it might have been LeBron that got the steal. LeBron or Durant. There was a play where Ant was rotating up, and then he dropped to basically be the low man and cover what could have been a dunk on a backdoor cut. Maybe it was the other way around. No, he stepped up. That's what it was. He stepped up. He was a low man, stepped up to stop transition, and Durant or LeBron sank in from the opposite corner to be the low man to cover the backdoor cut, the baseline cut, and got a steal, and they went the other way. That was an example of just really good on a string team defense that you usually don't see in game 2 of the Olympics from a team, a bunch of guys that don't play together regularly. And that was credit to Ant. He was part of that rotation. Really good aggressiveness from Anthony Edwards and from the Team USA defense overall to try and jump passing lanes, but also on the ball, use their size. Again, use their size 1 through 5 on the floor to their advantage to put pressure on the ball, to put hands in the passing lane, to get deflections. I mentioned Ant's deflections already. I thought his defense is something that, box score watchers or highlight watchers aren't going to know how good he was defensively this game. He was very, very good. And then my third stud, it's probably Derek White. I mean, it could be Booker. Booker at 10 and 6 in the starting lineup. I thought Derek White was great. Once again, 10 points, perfect 3 of 3 outside the arc, knocked down a free throw, also had 3 steals, 1 assist, no turnovers. And both he and Ant only played 17 minutes off the bench, but they were both so good. And again, the defense is what I would lead with here. South Sudan did end up scoring 86 points, but they forced him into 42% shooting, 19 turnovers to only 17 assists as a team. So like Team USA had 29 assists, 15 turnovers. That's a plus 14 if you want to look at that ratio. South Sudan has 17 assists to 19 turnovers, a -2 ratio, which is a very rare thing to see. And this ended up being a 17-point game, 17-point win for Team USA. So really good defense from Derek White. So studs are Bam, Ant, and Derek White all off the bench for Team USA. I don't have any duds. I know Steph Curry didn't play well. He also, by the way, had 4 fouls in 21 minutes, but he had 4 assists, only 1 turnover. I don't think too many of his shots were ill-advised. He was the worst player on the floor for Team USA, but he's not what I would, if I had to pick one, I guess it would have to be Steph because he was 1 of 9 shooting, 0 of 6 on threes. But, I thought he was fine. Like, it wasn't like he was a train wreck like Embiid was in the first game. I should also say Team USA did a good job. I mentioned getting the ball inside and kicking it outside for threes, but using the size advantage inside. They also did a good job off the dribble. Both Booker and Steph Curry had and ones where they just took somebody off the bounce and got to the cup. Ant did that a couple of times and got fouled and didn't make the bucket, but got to the free throw line. Again, an example of using their size advantage. Yes, South Sudan has has some very good athletes and some good length, but the combination of size, length, athleticism for Team USA allows them to create that advantage off the dribble, and they did a good job doing that in this game as well. Okay. So Team USA now has a spot in the quarterfinals. They're 2-0. They play Puerto Rico on Saturday. Game technically doesn't matter because they are going to be in the quarterfinals. And Puerto Rico won't be. They're 0-2. They have the worst point differential of anybody in the Olympics at this point in men's basketball. But obviously, Team USA wants to win every game they play. You can't lose to Puerto Rico. Just don't play around with that. Beat them. Move on. Other 2-0 teams, Canada, not a surprise. Germany 2-0 with a plus 33-point differential. They still have to play France. France is also 2-0. Remember, they squeaked out an overtime win over Japan last time out. So Germany, France will be fun, and that should be today. And then Canada, we know, is in. Germany and France are both in too, but it'll be interesting to see who wins that matchup. And also the point differential thing is interesting as well. So you've got Canada, Germany, France, U.S., all 2-0. 1-1 teams are Australia, Spain, and Serbia. Of course, Australia with Joe Ingles on the fringe of their rotation, Spain, and then Serbia with Jokic. And Nikhil Alexander-Walker in Canada, 2-0. and then Rudy and Germany 2-0. So we'll see how Germany, France shakes out. The teams that will not make it through almost certainly at this point, well, I guess maybe one of them has to. Maybe doesn't have to. I'm just looking at so remember the way it works is the top 2 teams in each group and then the 2 best third place teams. So Greece, Japan, Brazil, Puerto Rico are all 0-2. Group B has 2 teams that are 0-2 though, Japan and Brazil. So but I guess sitting here right now it would be South Sudan and Spain that would get in. Japan and Brazil would not. So it's pretty likely at this point, as long as South Sudan competes against Serbia and that game's close and their point differential remains above whoever wins one of these other matchups, then they'll move on to the quarterfinals and at least give themselves an opportunity to medal in the Olympics, which would be great. Like it'd be good for South Sudan. Talked already about Royal Ivy and Luol Deng on their coaching staff and some other former NBA guys. You know, the Omat and his Minnesota ties. So it'd be fun to see South Sudan compete for a medal. But all that to say, Team USA next plays Saturday against Puerto Rico. It's Saturday morning, I think 10:15 Central. We'll talk about that on Monday's show. And then as we get into next week, of course, then it gets real in terms of medal competition. And we'll get to see some interesting matchups. Like Germany, I think will be a lot of fun. France, of course, would be intriguing. Canada is the toughest one out there. I think that's going to be the toughest matchup for Team USA. But Puerto Rico's first on Saturday. We'll keep an eye on all Timberwolves players. Timberwolves players right now are a collective 7-1. With Australia's 1 loss to Spain being the only loss, or actually no, to Canada being the only loss they have so far. So we're very likely to see all Timberwolves players advance into the medal round. So we'll keep an eye on that. Friday, there's a couple of things I want to hit. There was some ESPN articles, some more insider stuff evaluating the offseason, rookies, etc. So we'll talk about that on Friday's show. Next week, we're going to move to 3 shows. We will do a Monday show talking about the Saturday Team USA game, any other Wolves news from the weekend. Next week will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday for our shows. For the month of August, we will mostly be 3 shows a week, although depending on Team USA's schedule, we may shift that a little bit over the next couple of weeks as we have that to cover. So make sure you're following and subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, Locked On Wolves can be found everywhere. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow or you can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow on X at Locked On T Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder that Locked On Wolves, thank you, I guess, for making it your first listen. A reminder that for your second listen, you can enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all we have for you today. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.